Hey, this is Judah Mantel for SceneForge Studio, and in this video I'm going to go over version 0.7.0. It has a great new feature for live compositing that I'm going to go over now. So I have this interrogation room scene here, and I removed all the characters from the scene because we're actually going to be using a real character, quote unquote, in the form of a live composited video. So I have this surface in the world here, and this is going to be where we put our footage. I highly recommend checking out the earlier compositing tutorial videos because those are still just as relevant. This is just a new feature on top of that. So I'm going to click configure my global footage, and you'll see we're using the same video clip that I used previously. If you have seen the video, you'll know that if I click play, the camera actually moves left and right. But for this example, we're going to pretend that it's a single camera view without the camera moving, focused on our character here in front of the green screen. So if I were to go to the keying settings, you'll see that I could adjust the color cutoff and feathering to isolate just our subject, but of course we still have this background around him. Now there are a couple options that are previously available. The first one is just to simply use the cropping sliders, which is pretty self-explanatory. You just dial in how much you want to crop off each side, and there you have your isolated subject. But the problem is that these sliders operate on a perfectly straight basis, meaning that I can't really compensate for the fact that the green screen here is not perfectly horizontal or vertical in the frame. So it's really perfect for a certain type of footage, unless you want to really crop in a little more than I would like and isolate the footage that way. It's not ideal. So the other way is to simply use the content-aware clipping. Now this works kind of like magic in my opinion. When you enable it, adjust some settings, and then it will remove everything for you. And it'll even work with a real-time moving camera video. But in most cases, where unless the camera is moving in a very specific way, this is overkill. It is a highly graphically intensive process that will potentially slow down the editor, so just keep that in mind. So if your camera is stationary and you're just acting in front of a green screen here, it's recommended you don't use this. You really want to use this for moving cameras and situations in which you really need it. So previously there wasn't a really good way around this. Now there is. You can specify a garbage mat manually to essentially tell the computer, okay, we only want to use footage that is inside this masked area or whatever we specify. That's called a garbage mat, because it's a mat indicating what part of the frame is, well, garbage, part of the frame we're not using. So I'm going to turn down all of my settings here so we just have the raw footage as is. And you'll see when I go to clipping, there's a new button that says Edit Mask. When I open this up, I get this great new menu that shows the footage unaltered. You can see we have a setting set up here from a previous session, but if I clear that out, you can see the window will show just our footage with no effects and no keying applied to it. And this is all live, so I can click play and it'll play back in this little window. We're going to just keep it like this for now. And you'll see a couple things about this window. The first is at the bottom, we have coordinates of where my mouse cursor is in the frame. Then we have the zoom ratio. As you'll see, it's currently at full frame or 1x, but I can use the scroll wheel to zoom in and out, and click and drag with my right mouse button or middle mouse button to pan around. Or I can click over here to reset the view. Then, of course, we have instructions as to how to use this new system. So it says click to add a point, right click to remove, and then click and drag to adjust. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to specify a couple different points, and we're going to say basically everything inside these markers that I'm drawing are going to be considered part of the frame. You can see once I add more than 4, it'll automatically connect them, so I can just keep adding and keep drawing my path around my desired footage here. And once I have something I like, I can click and drag the individual points to adjust them, or if I make a mistake, I can right click on one to delete it. And you can see it's pretty powerful. This basically allows us to do cropping on a much more granular, specific scale. So I can even say we're going to ignore everything around this little area here. We're just going to completely move around the box, which is super cool. And of course, you can get more and more intricate with this if you'd like, adjusting these points wherever you want, which is super helpful. Like this. And then once we have our desired mask here, it'll basically know to only keep things inside this frame. So I'm going to click Finished. And you'll see that before we even do any keying, before we do anything smart about the color keying or the difference matter, anything like that, it's just going to delete everything around that section. So now, as a second process here, we can go in and adjust our color cutoff, feathering, and everything like that. Of course, you're going to want to spend a little more time on this, get it more accurate. But you can see that with not much work, we have a perfect crop around only our subject, which is really cool. Now, as a quick other example, I have this footage of this rabbit here reading a book. And let's say I wanted to put the rabbit on the chair instead of him reading a book. So I could do the same thing, adjust my keying so it just removes everything I don't want. This is pretty solid. It's very rough, but it works. Keep in mind again that I am using a color correction on this footage. That's why it doesn't look quite green, but I will reset it so we have a more accurate. There we go. Just get the real color and remove it this way. Awesome. So we have this rabbit in front of this book. And let's say I want to position him on the table instead of in front of a book. I could position it so it's below the table and kind of hide it like that. That's not really the best way. So what we can do is use our garbage mat to just say we want everything except this book here. So I'm going to go to my mask. I'm going to really quickly just zoom in. I'm going to say, just get a quick path around the book. Just like this. And there you go. Now we removed our book while still having all of our proper keying controls, because it just removes everything around it. Now it's worth noting that this works in the exact same way for difference mats, not just color key, and any of the other versions of background subtraction that we're going to be adding later on. So you can see now we can do whatever we want with this, put our friend on the table, and position them how we want, which is super cool and really useful. And that is basically everything in this release, aside from a couple other bug fixes. If there's anything else to note, or if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to support@sceneforge.app, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. If you have any other suggestions about what to add to the compositing system or SceneForge as a whole, feel free to comment below, and I will also respond as soon as possible, hopefully with an update with the feature you request. And so with that, thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video.